I caught her red-handed on my property again, third time this month, and this time she brought gardening gloves. Janelle Owens, I shouted from my porch, my voice echoing across the cul-de-sac. That trail entrance is on my land. You don't get to prune my bushes like you're some park ranger. Janelle, the HOA president and full-time tyrant of our neighborhood, straightened up like a startled deer except with far more attitude. She was in her usual uniform, neon windbreaker, clipboard, and a permanent frown. "It's not your land, Travis Dalton," she snapped. "It's part of the greenway access outlined in the 1998 community plan. I have the right to keep it clear for communal use." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny, because the county property lines say otherwise. That trail entrance, it's 5 feet inside my fence, which I paid for." "And I just had it surveyed last month," she scoffed. "Don't get smart, that trail's been here longer than you. People use it." "People trespass on it," I corrected. "And since I own it, I'm sealing it off." Her jaw dropped like I just insulted her cat. "You wouldn't dare." I stepped off the porch, holding the rolled-up county survey in one hand and a fresh pack of steel fencing in the other. Watch me. 2 days later, with a buddy's help, I installed a tall privacy fence over the old trail entrance. I even posted a laminated copy of the property map next to it with a polite note: "Private property. Trail access relocated by HOA in 2005. I figured that'd be enough. It wasn't. The very next morning, I woke up to the sound of hammering. When I got outside, I found Janelle and 2 HOA board members trying to remove the fence. "This is destruction of property," I shouted, jogging over. "You think I won't call the cops?" Janelle turned, cheeks flushed, eyes blazing. "You're obstructing community access. This is an HOA matter now." "Then the HOA is about to have a legal matter on its hands," I said, pulling out my phone. By the time the police arrived, Janelle was mid-rant about historical trail use and neighborhood tradition. The officer listened patiently, then turned to me. "You got proof this is your land?" I handed over the county survey, the fencing permit, and just for good measure photos of Janelle trespassing the week before. The officer nodded. "Looks like Mr. Dalton's within his rights. HOA can't override property law." Janelle was fuming. "He's ruining everything." "That trail is a staple of this neighborhood," the officer shrugged. "Then maybe the HOA should have bought the land back when it was for sale." That shut her up, for the moment, but I knew Janelle. This was far from over. By the following week, the fence had been egged twice, the laminated property map torn off, and someone had jammed a garden stake under the latch. I installed a motion-triggered camera facing the gate and caught 2 teenagers climbing over it with a handwritten sign that read, "This is our trail." I wasn't mad at the kids. I was mad at the woman who'd stirred them up. Janelle had moved on from sabotage to spectacle. Saturday morning, I stepped out to find her setting up a folding table at the end of my driveway. She had a stack of flyers, a donation jar labeled Trail Defense Fund, and a whiteboard that read, "Emergency HOA meeting, public land stolen." I walked straight up to her and tapped the edge of the table. "You're trespassing on my driveway." She didn't even look up. "This is a peaceful community demonstration. On my private property." She finally met my eyes. "This affects everyone. You think you can cut off a trail that's been used for decades and not answer for it?" "You're right," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'll go ahead and answer for it." "To the county code enforcement." She froze for a half-second, then grabbed her clipboard and turned to the man beside her. "David, take photos of the fence. We'll need them for the easement claim." I lowered my voice. "There is no easement." I checked. She gave me a tight little grin that wasn't quite a smile. "We'll see what the judge says." I didn't like that tone. It wasn't frustration anymore. It was confidence, like she knew something I didn't. Monday morning, a formal notice appeared in my mailbox. He skimmed the document, then leaned back in his chair. "This is garbage," he said, "but they're banking on you not fighting it." "I'll fight it," he nodded. "Then let's file a counterclaim, and I'll want copies of any communications with the HOA. Especially if they've made threats." I handed him a folder. I've got emails and footage. By the time the court date arrived, Wyatt had built a rock-solid case. We had the county deed records, the surveyor's affidavit, and video evidence of Janelle and her board tampering with my fence. The courtroom was packed with residents. Some came to support me. Others came for the drama. Janelle sat at the front with 2 board members and a man in a gray suit who looked like he hadn't read a single page of the brief in front of him. When the judge entered, the room quieted to a hush. He was a no-nonsense type with thick glasses and the kind of voice that made people sit up straighter. "Let's begin with the HOA's petition," he said. Janelle's lawyer stumbled through a vague argument about implied easement, community reliance, and the spirit of the neighborhood. He tried to paint me as a rogue homeowner disrupting unity. Wyatt stood and countered with calm, clear facts. He presented the deed, the survey, and a timeline of the trail's closure, complete with timestamps from the video footage. Then he dropped the hammer. "Your Honor," he said, "we have documented proof that the HOA president and her associates attempted to dismantle private property without consent. That's not just a violation of civil boundaries, it's criminal trespass." The judge's brow furrowed. "Is this true, Mrs. Owens?" She opened her mouth, but Wyatt raised a hand. "We also have this." He clicked a remote and the courtroom monitor lit up. There she was, Janelle, in broad daylight, yanking nails out of my fence with a claw hammer. She was mid-lecture to someone off camera about taking the trail back by force. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Owens, were you aware that this constituted criminal activity?" Her lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, she was under the impression—" "I'm not asking you," the judge snapped. "I'm asking her." Janelle swallowed hard. "I thought the land was under HOA jurisdiction." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Dalton, did you ever receive notice that the HOA had a legal claim to this land?" "No, sir. I made sure to confirm it with both the county and the original developer. There's no record of HOA ownership, maintenance, or easement." The judge nodded slowly. Then he picked up his pen and began writing. "Injunction denied. Trail access to remain closed. Furthermore, I am ordering a permanent seal on the gate entrance, and the HOA is forbidden from initiating further claims without new evidence of ownership." He set down the pen. "And Mrs. Owens, consider this a formal warning. You are not above the law." She didn't move. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. One of the board members beside her shifted uncomfortably, like he'd just realized he'd bet on the wrong horse. Outside the courthouse, a few neighbors approached me. Some apologized for signing Janelle's petition. Others just wanted to know how I'd managed to keep so calm. I told them the truth. I didn't have to shout. I just let the facts do the talking. That night, the HOA sent out a mass email with no subject line. It was a single paragraph stating that the trail initiative had been formally concluded pending further review. No mention of the court order or the judge's scolding. Just a quiet retreat, like someone trying to back out of a room without being seen. But the damage was done. By the end of the month, 2 board members had resigned. 3 homeowners requested a special election to remove Janelle from her post. And the donation jar, someone mailed it back to her house. Empty. The sealed gate still stands. I had it reinforced with concrete posts and added a small plaque that reads, "Respect boundaries." Some people pass by without looking, others stop and nod. Either way, the message is clear: this neighborhood belongs to all of us, but my land, that's not up for debate. 2 weeks after the court ruling, the neighborhood felt different. The usual brisk waves from passers-by had turned into full-on greetings. People lingered longer on their walks, chatting by mailboxes they used to breeze past. It wasn't just the trail drama, it was the sudden realization that the HOA didn't have unchecked authority anymore. That illusion had cracked, and everyone could feel it. But Janelle Owens wasn't the type to quietly drift away. She'd lost the courtroom battle, but something about the silence that followed didn't feel like surrender. It felt like maneuvering. I noticed it first when I received a letter not from the HOA but from the County Environmental Review Board. A formal notice of investigation had been filed against me for unauthorized obstruction of a drainage corridor. According to the document, my fence was allegedly impeding water flow that could lead to flooding risk in adjacent community-maintained green space. It was almost theatrical. I called Wyatt. He read the notice twice, then asked, "Drainage corridor, that area's uphill from you, isn't it? By about 6 feet. This is a fabricated complaint." He filed a disclosure request with the county. Turns out the complaint had been submitted anonymously, but the language in the form matched word for word with phrasing in HOA meeting minutes from 6 months earlier. Wyatt requested those minutes using the HOA's own transparency clause. They'd forgotten to scrub them clean. The kicker. The so-called green space at risk of flooding was a dry patch behind the community pool where nothing had grown in years. The county dropped the investigation within days. That should have been the end, but it got worse. The following Friday, I came home from work and found a man in a beige utility vest poking around my backyard gate. He had a clipboard, measuring tape, and a rolled-up satellite photo. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Inspection. I'm with the Municipal Safety Division. We received a report you may have installed structural fencing without proper anchoring. Safety hazard." I nearly laughed. "That fence is permitted and reinforced. Who reported it?" He flipped through his form, then hesitated. "It came through the HOA Safety Committee. They don't have jurisdiction over private structures." He paused, then nodded. "You're right. Sorry, sir. Won't take up more of your time." I watched him walk away, then called Wyatt again. He was already ahead of me. "I've got a contact in the county clerk's office," he said. "They've seen a spike in nuisance filings from your HOA. You're not the only one." He was right. Over the next several days, I started hearing from neighbors. Rita, 2 doors down, had been cited for a hazardous tree that turned out to be a perfectly healthy oak. The Clarks were fined for non-uniform paint on a shed they hadn't touched in years. It was like someone had flipped a switch and turned inspections into a weapon. And every complaint had one thing in common: they originated from Janelle's committees. But then something happened that took things from petty to criminal. One night, around midnight, I woke up to the sound of metal grinding. I grabbed a flashlight and headed for the back door. The gate was open. My reinforced, sealed gate unlatched and swinging, I flicked the beam toward the trail entrance. A man in dark clothes was crouched by the base of the fence, holding a cordless saw. "Hey!" I shouted. He bolted, dropping the saw as he ran. I chased him to the edge of the property line, but he vanished into the trees. I called the sheriff. When the deputies arrived, they took my statement and bagged the saw for prints. I showed them the camera footage clear as day, the man stepping out from behind a hedge, cutting through the latch bracket with practiced ease. They took it seriously. More seriously than I expected. The next morning, I got a call from Deputy Hanks. "We ran the serial on the tool," he said. It was reported stolen from a storage shed behind the HOA maintenance building. I blinked. "You think this guy was working for the HOA?" "I think someone's using HOA property to commit trespass. We've opened a criminal investigation." "Don't talk to anyone about this just yet." By that evening, word still got out. The patrol car that parked outside my house for over an hour stirred up every curtain on the block. The next day, a small crowd gathered at the mailbox cluster. People were talking quietly but urgently. I didn't say a word. Then came the subpoena. The sheriff's office served it to the HOA office, requesting all security logs, tool inventory, and internal communications related to trail access enforcement. Janelle tried to claim executive privilege and delay the release, but the county attorney shut her down in a single afternoon. And that's when everything unraveled. Someone from the board leaked the emails. A series of messages between Janelle and the safety committee outlined a plan to test the gate's resilience, her words, not once, but multiple times. One email even suggested contracting someone off the record to apply pressure. The sheriff's office traced the fingerprints on the stolen saw to a local handyman named Boyd Temple, someone Janelle had hired before for off-book landscaping work. When they brought him in, he cracked. He told investigators Janelle had personally offered him $200 and a favor with the board if he could make the gate go away. No paper trail, no questions. She was arrested the following week for conspiracy to commit vandalism, unlawful entry, and misuse of HOA assets. The mugshot hit the local news by that evening, and the fallout was instant. An emergency board meeting was called the next morning. This time, it wasn't in a community center or clubhouse. It was in the public library, under the supervision of a county observer. 35 homeowners showed up. More than 2/3 of them signed the petition to remove Janelle as HOA president immediately. Someone brought a box of donuts labeled Trail Mix. The mood was tense, but not angry, more like a collective exhale. They voted in a new interim board, one that actually listened. The trail entrance remains sealed. No one's touched it since. The HOA issued a formal letter of apology to me and 5 other homeowners who'd been targeted. They offered to reimburse legal fees and waived dues for 3 months. I accepted the apology. I didn't need the dues refund. The sheriff's office concluded their investigation with 3 misdemeanor charges against Janelle. A judge sentenced her to community service and banned her from holding any position in a homeowners association for 5 years. Her house went up for sale not long after. And something strange happened after that. People started showing up at my place not for conflict but for advice. How to read property lines, how to apply for permits, how to check HOA bylaws. I helped where I could, not because I wanted to be a hero. Just because I knew what it felt like to be steamrolled. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Rita dropped off a pie on my porch. "Not for the trail thing," she said. "For reminding us we're not just signatures on an HOA ledger." I looked out across the street. Kids were playing basketball in a driveway that used to get flagged for noise concerns. An older couple was repainting their mailbox without waiting for approval. The neighborhood hadn't just survived, it had woken up, and the trail, it's still there, buried under leaves and quiet. Exactly where it belongs. A month after Janelle's sentencing, the neighborhood was quieter but not still. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm when everyone's peeking through their blinds to see what's left standing. The new interim HOA board, led by a retired postal inspector named Nadine Kruger, had started cleaning house metaphorically and literally. They'd already suspended 3 committees that had been used to harass residents, and a full audit of the HOA's finances was underway. I figured that was the end of it. Then I got a call from Wyatt. "You might want to come downtown," he said. "There's a public hearing scheduled this afternoon. County Oversight Committee, your name's on the witness list." I leaned against my truck and stared at the phone. For what? They're investigating misuse of HOA funds, and it's not just about your fence anymore. By the time I arrived at the county building, the hearing room was already half full. There were faces I recognized: neighbors, former board members, one of the developers who'd sold lots in the subdivision 2 decades ago. At the center table sat a man with a stack of binders and a laptop, the county's financial auditor. The chair of the Oversight Committee, a sharp-eyed woman in a navy blazer, opened the session with a brief statement. "We've received multiple complaints regarding potential misappropriation of community funds, unauthorized property management practices, and coercive enforcement by the former HOA leadership of Timberwalk Estates." She nodded to the auditor. "Mr. Delaney, please proceed." What followed was shocking. According to the audit, nearly $24,000 had been siphoned from the HOA's Capital Improvement Fund over the past 4 years. A pattern emerged: payments made to contractors with no verifiable business license, landscaping charges for areas that hadn't been maintained in years, and bulk equipment purchases that had vanished without a trace. Most of the invoices were signed off by Janelle Owens or her vice president, a man named Victor Hall, who had quietly moved out of the neighborhood 2 weeks after her arrest. Furthermore, Delaney said, flipping through one of the binders, we found evidence of falsified meeting minutes used to justify sudden dues increases. These increases were pushed through without proper homeowner votes. The committee chair glanced toward the audience. Is Mr. Dalton present? I stood and approached the microphone. They asked me to describe the events around the trail closure, the court case, and the break-in attempt. I kept it factual, and when I finished, the chair asked, "Were you ever made aware that HOA funds were used in any of the efforts to reclaim the trail?" I nodded. Yes. After the arrest, the sheriff's office informed me that the tool used in the attempted break-in was purchased with HOA funds. That was confirmed by the serial number tied to a bulk order placed under the Safety Committee's budget. There was a ripple of murmurs from the audience. The chair turned to Delaney. "How many purchases like that were there?" 17, he replied, all made over a 2-year span. Most of the equipment is unaccounted for. The committee moved fast. Within 2 days, they submitted a formal request to the district attorney's office to open a criminal investigation into financial misconduct by the former HOA leadership. The DA agreed. Charges were filed within a week: embezzlement, wire fraud, and falsification of financial records. It didn't stop with Janelle. Victor Hall was picked up in another state, living under his brother's name, and extradited back. 2 more former board members were charged with aiding in the fraudulent votes for budget approvals. The new board issued a statement distancing themselves from all prior leadership. They also voted unanimously to dissolve the current HOA structure and replace it with a community association, a volunteer-based group with no enforcement powers and full transparency requirements. No fines. No mandatory dues. Any future projects would require full community approval. When the HOA officially disbanded, it was announced during a town hall meeting held on the high school lawn. Over 70 residents gathered, sitting on folding chairs and picnic blankets. Nadine stepped up to the mic. "We've all seen what happens when power goes unchecked," she said. "This isn't about fences or trails anymore. It's about neighbors choosing cooperation over control." People clapped, not just politely, but with real relief. After the meeting, I was packing up when a younger couple I didn't recognize approached me. They'd moved in while all the chaos was happening and had kept to themselves. The husband held out his hand. "We just wanted to say thanks," he said, "for standing up when the rest of us were still figuring things out." I shook his hand. "I didn't do it alone," he smiled. "Still. You showed us it wasn't hopeless." That night, I walked the edge of my property one last time before turning in. The gate was still sealed, the trail behind it slowly being reclaimed by grass and time. But it wasn't about that anymore. It was about what had grown in its place. The neighborhood had changed. People talked more, helped each other. When someone's roof needed patching, volunteers showed up. When a new family moved in, they weren't handed a list of rules, they were invited to a barbecue. We didn't need a board to keep us in line. We needed each other to stay honest. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the county, not a complaint, not a summons. It was a thank you note from the Oversight Committee, acknowledging my testimony and informing me that the case against Janelle and her co-conspirators had resulted in full convictions. Each had been sentenced to probation, restitution, and mandatory community service, ironically, in the same parks and green spaces they had once tried to control. I framed the letter and hung it in my garage, not as a trophy but as a reminder. The law works when you know how to use it. The last time I saw Janelle, she was picking up trash along the highway in a neon vest, eyes fixed on the ground like she was afraid to look up. She didn't see me drive by. I didn't honk. I didn't stop. There was nothing left to say. The trail was closed, but the future was wide open.